to prevent trans people from changing their legal name.
Yep.
Hi, friends.
That's why
Welcome
you
to
have
the
no trouble.
ladies' room. I'm Allison, the mighty librarian.
And I'm Vagabondia, the slightly less mighty librarian.
No, you should totally say the mightier librarian. You're totally
No way,
mightier than
man.
I am.
You're never going to wear me down.
And yeah, welcome to the ladies' room. We're working on rebranding, and so bear with us. A lot to talk about this week. A lot of wins that we want to talk about because it's really easy to fall into that doomsday state of despair that I find myself into. So, and a lot of the wins, even if they're small, they don't get the attention because of so much other stuff that's going on. So, I guess we will get into it. So, Georgia today had some win, not today, over the past week. We had a big win, and let me get there. So this is a statement from the Georgia Library Association. So you all might have remembered that we were talking about library laws that state legislatures are passing because they want to control the flow of information. And if anyone else tells you anything different, like it's to protect kids, it is not. It is all about control of information. They were happy to report that not a single piece of anti-library legislation passed the House this session. Passed anything this session. Some of them made it to different chambers. So I don't think I have the documents up. No, I closed out of them, of course. But there was quite a few anti-library legislation bills that went through Georgia. It feels like every legislative session there's at least one to either ban books, ban libraries, ban or criminalize librarians, remove protections, and Georgia Library Association, in conjunction with every library, if you want to support like libraries, that organization that supports libraries all over the nation. Certainly, I'm sure GLA would love your support, but every library is a fierce advocate for libraries, and they go to bat everywhere. I talk
amazing.
A lot about Georgia because I live here, but they have been a real force within the last 3 years. But they also work tightly with the ACLU in a lot of cases. ACLU is real busy in a lot of other fields, so every library really takes a lot of that legal burden on that the ACLU needs to devote its resources to other things that are equally, if not more important, and whatnot. But it was a good win. And one other thing that I wanted to show you, while it's a win, it's also, we have to remember that they are coming back for us next term. This dude, this ray of sunshine right there, is behind the latest push. When he got to the state legislature, he has always been one of the co-sponsors behind anti-librarian, anti-DEI stuff since he got here. This legislative session, he's been like the guy to push this through. One particular no, that's about the DEI, although that's important. He's very upset about DEI. He said he attributes in this paragraph that Helene relief was more important, and that is, a lot of Georgians are still suffering from Hurricane Helene, and they were not granted extension for FEMA relief, so that was a big crisis in a lot of parts of Georgia. Uh, but here he is. This is the dark quote that I wanted to highlight. I expect both Senate Bill 74 and Senate Bill 120 to come back to get in committee, to go back through the process, to refine it, and to get it hopefully to a point where folks can be comfortable with it. And you're all gonna be like, well, so what? Like, what's the point? You know, what's the big deal in that? They are wearing us down and with their own colleagues down. But they're trying to normalize this. And a lot of shit's already been normalized. It's really scary how quickly, but this has really been going on for years now. Years, and not just with libraries. So, Vagabondia, what do you think?
It's frustrating. You're absolutely right. And what they do is these think tanks come up with a bill, all the states play with it and refine it and try to make it pass. And then when one state finally wears it down to where they can get it through, the other states copy the same thing. It's like where bad ideas come to live or something. The other good thing that happened this week, two things. Ohio, who's traditionally been very supportive of libraries, their initial budget suggested a decrease in funding, I think by half or more. And after quite a bit of pushback, they actually approved the budget with full funding plus extra, which is very surprising in this environment. So that's great news. And the other thing is, as much as the American Library Association annoys the shit out of us, librarians, they did, with another group, file a lawsuit against the Trump administration for the gutting of the Institute for Museum and Library Sciences Services. So
It is
that's,
about fucking time.
I know, right?
ALA. Don't even get me started on ALA.
I know, right?
All right.
Um,
Non-library folk, American Libraries Association is ALA. And up until, I would say, up in 2019, they did an all right job in terms of responding to book bans and, challenges and that sort of thing. But then 2020 hit and all the let's ban every book that makes us feel a little weird inside came into play. And then ALA just was like caught with deer in headlights. And we lost librarians, and libraries lost a lot of ground, a lot of protections. Schools lost a lot of ground in staving off extremists from coming after us criminally, coming after us personally, coming after us professionally. And I personally feel like ALA kept issuing press releases, and that's great, but nobody fucking reads a press release from ALA. I don't even read ALA press releases. So how, instead of getting lawyers and lobbyists to combat the problems that lawmakers were making for us, I feel like they sat by and watched. And they just kept
holding seriously.
I think they thought it would die out. And I think they waited way too long to. Once I think Texas might have been the first. It was either Texas or Idaho that banned even having your college or university library affiliated to ALA. And for the non-library people, college libraries in particular need to be accredited by ALA because they're not like they're the governing body, but they're like certifying that this library follows best practices and can, is at a standard. There's a standard that's set and this library meets it. So a lot of red states said, you can't do that anymore because I think the president at the time, once she was in grad school and identified as a Marxist. I don't really understand that whole thing. But ALA became a Marxist organization. And even then, they did not fight back. And they kept holding their ridiculously expensive conferences And I was just like, why don't you quit it with these week-long conferences and start using that money to lobby Congress? Like,
I
what
really
is
think
wrong?
that's why
Like,
the yeah, I think the response from Library Land in general was a lot slower than it should have been when all the challenges started coming in 2020, because I think we were all expecting ALA because they were the ones with the experience of fighting bans in the past. We were waiting for them to step up, and they just never seemed to. And then as there were more and more challenges, and they were getting embedded into legislation and everything else, ALA was behind the eight ball and they didn't deliver. And I think it was disheartening. And I think a lot of people gave up as a result. And it was happening on multiple fronts. And they should have been able to see it coming. As soon as the first, what was it, the one representative or senator from Texas had his staffers generate a list of books to ban, and they started going around with that list to all libraries, whether the library had those books or not. They didn't even look. And the books on the list were keyword search, so a lot of them had nothing to do with what he was supposedly going after anyway. They should have been prepared for that. Like I feel like they did no forward thinking on seeing this coming with the rise of
mm-hmm.
Trumpism and MAGA and everything else. And then they were also going after the legal protections for libraries, for librarians in particular, that have been almost every state had laws that protected librarians and teachers from those laws. They should have been prepared for that to be challenged and should have already had their game plan ready and easy to modify. And they just seemed to not. And it just made it worse because it made it gain traction so much faster. And then it was that perfect storm of well as that the American Library Association president is elected by its members. And so she was the choice of the people. She had made some statements in the past. Big deal. Like, so what? I don't care. But they were so fixated on protecting her from that, it felt like to me, protecting her from that backlash,
Yeah,
that they forgot that what they were there for was to protect libraries. And so that became the
yeah,
story instead of what was happening in the individual libraries. And we lost so much
yeah,
ground as a result.
absolutely. Um, and a lot was going on. I think librarians in general, one of our, I guess by nature, we're not that, I wouldn't say passive, but we're not like really, we haven't had to rise to the occasion in terms of putting ourselves out there. And a lot of it's real easy. I know I fall into this a lot. Like, it's gonna pass. It's gonna pass. So, like, because we've gone libraries since I've been in library. I've been in libraries going on 20 years now. Jesus Christ, I'm getting old. In some capacity, and we've always weathered it, and we've always been able to reason with it, and the public was had the desire to weather it with us. But because the public is also so distracted starting in 2020 by a lot of issues that are really important to them too, they also don't notice what's happening. And so we're like, oh, it'll pass. This, like, this is absurd. And like, cooler minds will prevail kind of thinking. That's the kind of mindset I had in 2020, was cooler minds will prevail. Because who the hell wants to live in this hellish nightmare? Like, surely everybody can see what's going on. And there's always been that one jerk who wants to ban every book in the world. And like, it really seemed like it would pass, particularly when Biden was elected in 2020. Like, but then it was clear that it wasn't. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, once, like, I would say June of 2021 hit, it was clear this wasn't passing. And that's like, I just hold a lot of, not resentment, that's not the right word, but I mean, I just feel like, see, in 2022 in particular, because this was right before the midterms, when they started calling librarians pedophiles and child molesters and all of that. And I started seeing protesters outside an ALA conference. I'm just like, ALA, stop this now. Like, stop with the conferences. Because if you don't stop, if you don't start addressing this, there's going to be no reason for a conference, because there's going to be no library industry left.
Yeah. You make a really go. I want to go back to a point you made earlier that in the library field for generations, we have always been fortunate enough that librarians have been considered very trusted members of their community. Like pretty much universally across the board, we're considered as trusted as EMTs, for example. And that's always
Mm-hmm.
been the case for ages. There's one or two incidents here and there, but it's never, but widespread, that's been the case. So when the challenges arose, we knew that the public would protect us and would step in. But with everything going on and all the distractions, we were too reliant on that thinking and it didn't work. And we're not great advocates for ourselves, unfortunately.
Mm-mm.
Um,
No.
I mean, if we were, we wouldn't get paid the trash we get paid, right? Um,
Right. Yeah.
right?
I
But
think that's
we were
truth.
so reliant on that. And I think you're right. And I think ALA was kind of bumbling between trying to defend the president, who, by the way, has no power to make decisions. She's pretty much a
I
figurehead.
know.
And
Yeah.
so that was stupid. And that's all they had to say. She has no power to do anything. This is just who the members elected to be their representative. That's it. But whatever.
Yeah.
But then I think they kind of went dark for a while because they thought the focus was too much on them and that it was hurting the cause. But that hurt as well because we had no advocate then. We didn't even have a bad advocate. We had no advocate, and
Mm-mm.
so that was almost worse. Um, and I think there's multiple fronts going on. So Trump's anti DEI executive orders, for example, South Carolina is, I don't remember if they passed it or if they're just now considering it. Um, they're the first state, I think they passed it, a first state to pass a DEI ban that mirrors the Trump DEI ban. The first state to do that. That's a problem because that's going to
That's
affect
what
life.
Georgia was trying to do. Mirror. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in that same article I had up, Max Burns, he says it's we're trying to mirror the Trump policy. But here's the thing
Exactly.
that they're not like reading the room in Georgia, which is I think a good thing because it'll get them out of office faster. But like as we've seen in the last couple of election cycles, I would say even in the last going back to 2018 when Stacey Abrams almost won, neither party is reading the room right. And here's the thing and this isn't sexy or elegant the way I'm going to put this, but this is legit how Georgia operates. Georgia will consistently vote conservative unless a few conditions happen. The level of crazy is too much, or they suppress voters. And that's what I'm sorry, that's why Stacey Abrams didn't get elected. Brian Kemp, the man running against her, did a voter dump right before election day and purged voter rolls. So she lost by some minuscule amount of like 20 to 50,000 votes, something like that. But the level of crazy was getting too much in Georgia. So they almost went for Stacey Abrams. Fast forward to 2020. Trump's crazy was too much for Georgia. A lot of Georgians were getting, um, dying from COVID. Brian Kemp was getting hammered by Trump politically. And he was a very popular governor even at that point. So the level of crazy Trump was presenting, too much, Biden wins the state, plus both Democrats. And the Republican runners of that, Kelly Loeffler and Perdue, I forgot his first name, David Perdue, they weren't all that crazy. But Trump's crazy was enough to cover their crazy and lump them into not getting reelected. So then we fast forward to the midterms. Raphael Warnock gets elected because the crazy of help me out. The football player, who did he run against? Somebody help
Oh
me.
yeah. Oh my God, the crazy football player. What the heck is his name?
Yeah, with the badge. What's his name?
Yeah.
I can't. Well,
That's how
anyway,
important he
Raphael
was. That's
Warnock.
how seriously we took him.
Yeah, um, Raphael Warnock defeats him. So my point is that Georgia will vote conservative unless the perceived crazy is too much to handle, and then they will vote Democrat. They prefer to vote Herschel Walker. Thank you. Um, so Georgia votes conservative most of and I'm talking as a state, not the individual districts. That's a whole other can of crazy. But when it's a statewide election to as a state elects somebody, Georgia always votes conservative unless the perceived crazy is just because Georgia's demographic ain't like Alabama's or Florida's or to the north, South Carolina and Tennessee. We have a much more diverse population of people that are here from and within the cities, within the rural areas, because you can have rural southwest Georgia um, and central Georgia that are very blue pockets. You can have small rural areas in North Georgia that are home of the KKK, but like there's no definitive like sections. I mean, sure, Atlanta, Columbus, Savannah, Macon, the bigger cities obviously tend to vote more Democratic. But just because it's a rural area in Georgia doesn't necessarily mean it's red or huge Trump support is there, like it might mean in other states. So the legislature isn't reading the room, and if I was a betting woman, Kemp understands this. He understands this very well. He doesn't get extreme during election season. He wants to go for Senate in 26. John Ossoff has already started going after him. He cannot let something like this pass. He can't. Otherwise, he gets lumped into Trump's crazy and he'll lose. Kemp will win unless they can lump him into Trump's crazy. And
Well, and it works
I
to his
don't know about
advantage.
Marjorie.
Kemp
I'm
played it
sorry?
safe. Kemp made a very strategic decision when Trump was asking for the just find me the votes because he didn't play into that crazy. If he had, yeah, that definitely would have hurt his Senate attempts in the future. But because he distanced himself from it and stood up against it, that makes him seem to be a reasonable option, which is always good. Um,
Um,
and that was a
Brandon makes
very
a
smart strategic move.
yeah. He like Kemp at first tried out the MAGA thing, and it backfired very early on, especially in COVID. He in the very early stages of COVID, he tried to be the Trumper, but it didn't work for him. And then he saw where Georgia was heading, and he knows the demographic really well because he almost lost to Stacey Abrams. He knows how to read the room well, and I am not going to bet on this, but I if I was a betting person, I would expect these bills that are anti DEI, anti library to not make it to his desk because he doesn't want to not sign them. Yeah, he has the option to not sign. He doesn't want them to hit his desk. So I have a feeling he shut this shit down. But I also think that there was a huge public pressure on the legislature. Plus, you have to remember that the hands-off protest was outside their offices, not like 3 days before this fails in the House, the Georgia House of Representatives. So I think a lot of them were like, "Yo, this is a little too nuclear right now. Sorry, dude, we're not touching this."
Well,
But
and your point
with
about
that
them not
said,
reading the room is significant across the board because that's the problem we're having with both parties is
oh
they're
yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
they're clearly
yeah.
so distant from the actual lived experience of the average American that that's part of where the disenfranchisement comes in. I understand it's frustrating why but I do understand why some young people in particular are like, it doesn't mean anything anyway, they're all corrupt, because they are clearly so distant from the real experience and don't hear and don't listen to what we're saying, um, and then seem shocked when they get voted out or they get primaried. Um, and that's a huge problem. And that's why we see, like, in the presidential election in 2024, a third of voters didn't even show up. And that was huge, particularly in a very close race.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, they will never let her run for Senate here. Never. She will that will guarantee. I promise you, they will never let her run for Senate. Or they no. Well, they might, but she ain't gonna in the primary. I mean, Kemp will destroy her. He's very popular. Marjorie Taylor Greene isn't popular outside of her district. She learned that the hard. Remember when she tried to go around the country with Matt Gaetz on their Freedom America tour? Like this was like in 2021 ish, 2022, and it lasted all of like a week because nobody wants to outside of their districts. Nobody wants to listen to them. Or very
You know
few
what's
people
funny
want
about
to listen to them.
MTG? She stepped away from the Freedom Caucus quite a bit. Like, she's toned down a lot of her shit. It's pretty sad when MTG isn't the craziest bitch in the house. Like, that's some serious
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't like if MTG. Maybe that's why she's toning it down. Like, but she cannot read a room to save her life because if she could, like, I mean, I she will not win against Brian Kemp. No way will she. I will eat my was that
Eat my hat.
I I will eat crow
Mm.
if she is the primary winner. I would be very very shocked.
Well, what's
And I
interesting
think
is we saw
Democrats would
during,
welcome it. Like,
yeah.
if she
What's
was the
interesting is
Senate candidate.
we saw, yeah, she would be doing us a favor by running for Senate because she would get creamed. Um, I think it's interesting that during the Biden era, they ramped up the crazy and the alignment with MAGA, but they've backed off now because Trump's policies are increasingly unpopular, and they're realizing that being too closely attached to him is
Yeah.
deadly for them right now. So you're seeing a lot of them stepping back from their previous tone a little bit. And if they have any aspirations for future political office, they're going to have to distance themselves because it's just bad news.
Yeah, I don't think MTG is viable in anything outside of her district. Like in Georgia, she's already damaged her. I mean, never say never. People have short memories, but her level of crazy is like, I just don't see it. I mean, people do not take her seriously in most of Georgia.
So there's a
I don't.
conversation in the chat about her insider trading, and that may be what takes her and some of these other people down because they were a bit flagrant with it. They definitely did not
Yeah,
have the savvy to do it more under the radar, and it's probably going to hurt them.
yeah. Though I mean, a lot of people feel like there won't be accountability. Trump will never face accountability. If he does, great. I'm not expecting anything because he's the slickest, slipperiest little thing I've ever seen. You know what? Maybe we should let it go because it seems like trying to make him face accountability just makes it worse.
Mm.
And so, but the Trump immunity, I'm not talking like legal, the Supreme Court shit. That Trump's immunity to everything is exclusive to him. So these people who are breaking the law and committing literal crimes against humanity, they will face accountability eventually. It may not be next week, next month, even next year, or even within the next, until we have a new president. They will face accountability because, like, what they're doing, like that Holman guy and Christy Nome, they will be in The Hague at some point in their lives because what they are doing is breaking Geneva Convention And what they don't seem to realize, and I would be really careful with them traveling internationally. You go to the wrong country, they can arrest you to bring you to the ICC. And there isn't a whole lot that the US can do about it.
From
So,
your mouth to God's ears.
like
Make it
right
so.
now, that might be unattainable, but if there's a new president, I would, if I were the two of them, I would be very careful on where they traveled
Well, and
because
Trump is so transactional and so petty that he will claim right now that he would protect them. And maybe at this precise moment he would, but further down the line, when it puts his ass in a sling, he will throw them under the bus faster than anything. And they have to know
yeah.
that.
And I'm not the only one. I've been thinking this for a while, but there's a lot of commentators who know way more than I do and who have been insiders. I mean, Rick Wilson says is even more optimistic than I am. Like they will be charged with crimes against humanity with what they are doing. And think about we just know the very surface level of things. Like imagine what's like below what we see.
Oh my God,
So
like
I'm
20 years from now, when some of these files are declassified, or 40 years from now when they're declassified, we're going to find out some stuff that are going to make your hair curl. Like when some of these
yeah.
CIA and FBI files are unlocked.
So but and as bitter as it's as much as that's not satisfying now because we really want I know I want to see the immediate like bad guys lose. Sometimes it's even a little sweeter when you have to wait for it because it's better.
Right. Well, and so mentioning Nome and Homan and all that. So the Supreme Court, the courts have been slow as they always are, and they've been so inconsistent. Like they approved his use of the Alien Enemies Act, but they unanimously, in a shocking turn, said that well,
Mm-hmm.
supported the lower court in saying that they have to return Abrego Garcia. Um, but they played that little legal linguistical game where they said facilitate, not effectuate, which is going to give them that gray area of saying, oh, well, we really can't. Whereas effectuate would mean, no, you don't have a choice. You produce him or else. And they're so bad at backing up their threats. Um, the courts notoriously, if it were you or I, we would be in jail right now for not doing what we were told to do. But because we're not, because they're not us, they're going to drag this out as long as possible. So Trump is meeting with the president of El Salvador tomorrow in the White House. They could solve this all right now. They just need to put Abrego Garcia on the same freaking plane. Boom, it was an
That's
accident.
what
There
I
you
think that
go,
he
all
should do.
solved. We're going to give him a little money and he's going to stay quiet and everybody's happy, right? But they're not going to do that because I don't think there's enough money in the world to keep that man from telling what he's been through. And they cannot have that because that's going to piss
Well,
people off.
I have a slightly different, like a spin on that. I have all right. So El Salvador has is it El Salvador that has the good dictator who is nicknamed the good dictator, or was that Ecuador? It might be
I don't
either.
I don't think it's El Salvador. It might be, but I
Well,
don't think so.
yeah, I'm thinking I might be thinking of Ecuador, who's their leader was nicknamed the good dictator. But I digress. But
This is the world
anyway,
we live in.
I think right. I think that if the El Salvadorian president really wants to get on the map and really want to show who's boss, he should just bring the dude with him.
Oh my god, that'd be
He doesn't
hilarious.
like think about it. He does not give a fuck what the world says about his little hellhole prison that he got. He does
Well,
not care because if he did, he
here's
wouldn't
the other
become the
reason
U.S.
exactly, but here's the other reason he needs to do that. So El Salvador, surprisingly, is still part of the UN's Human Rights Committee or Council. The US is not, which that's a whole other thing.
Yeah,
CCOT, the El Salvadorian prison, is a problem, and humanitarian groups have been after him for ages about it. So he could earn himself some serious international goodwill by returning this guy, whether Trump asks him to or not,
That's a good
by
that
saying,
good point.
look, we're abiding. You don't need to, we're the good guys here. And now they're not looking at him for the shady stuff he's got going on as much. He could play some political 3D chess here if he wanted to. Will he? I don't know. He's making a hell of a
Yeah,
lot of money because
I
we're
know
paying
very
them to
little
detain these people.
yet. I don't know enough about South American politics or who's who. Obviously, you can only keep up with so much, and
Well,
I have
I
a
look
full time
forward to
job.
that headline because if it happens, I'm going to giggle so hard. And it's going to
Oh
be
man,
excellent.
because it would also show like he doesn't really. I mean, and then think about it. Think about it this way. Okay, so what? Like, play out the mind map game of like if he did this, what would happen? Like, I think more would benefit him to do it than of him to just like avoid it. Because think about it like this too: the press, Trump either has to keep the press out of the Oval Office because you know how like there's always press,
Hmm.
every foreign leader that the president meets. So he either has to keep all American press out. I don't know if he can kick out the Ecuador. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Ecuador. The El Salvadorian press, whatever that looks like, out from covering this story only because he's the leader. But so either way, any way Trump handles this, other than bring that guy back with you, he looks bad
Hmm.
because the press is going to ask about it,
Hmm.
and he's going to respond terribly because that's just how he rolls. So,
Well, and I don't
like,
want this to happen. I don't want this poor one guy who has been wronged to become the poster child of all of this craziness, and yet it is inevitable that he is. Um, my concern is that El Salvador threatened not to take any more of our deportees when Trump put the tariffs on, and then Trump backtracked on the tariff for El Salvador and they came to an agreement. They're making a lot of money off of us paying them to hold these deportees. So he's got a financial incentive to go along, but he also has to be careful of the international pressure. And right now, I'm pretty sure he's firmly in the butt kisser camp, so he may not do the right thing. And it it would be a shame if he has to suffer the consequences of his own actions. And please tell me his name is not really President Bukaki. Good God.
no, it's not. It's a play on. It's I
Oh,
think
I
it's
know.
Bukele.
Okay, okay. Because
Yeah,
that's
it's
just
not
too good.
Bukele.
It's just too good.
It's spelled very similarly to the word. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah, Cynthia
Bukele.
raises the question. There's some question about whether he's alive. So, first the
I
administration
don't think he
says,
is.
well, right. So, first the administration says, well, he's in a foreign country and we have no way of telling. And then yesterday, the State Department goes, he's alive and secure. Okay, that means you have contact in El Salvador and have personally vetted that he's alive, which means you can pick him up and put him on a plane. Like, you can't tell me that you know he's safe and secure, but that you can't bring him back because those two things are incompatible. You don't want to,
Yeah,
or you're telling us he's fine to prevent a, George Floyd moment, or he really is, but you're still not going to bring him back. Like, this doesn't end well either way.
yeah. I like. But you. So the I think the easiest explanation is usually the correct one. So I think the reality of it, because Trump just wants to make this. In the end, he just wants this to go away.
Hmm.
So I think what makes it go away and stay away is if the guy is not alive. Whether or not that happened by our in like encouraging it along, or it happened just because he or had already feared for his life in El Salvador anyway. Um, you know, Either way, that's the only way this goes away. I'm not saying like it should go. I'm just saying in Trump's head
Hmm.
because this ain't going away. like anytime soon for Trump. It's
Yeah, there's
gonna
no good
like it.
solution either way. The guy returns, he talks, that's bad. The guy doesn't return, people keep pushing for it, that's bad. We find out that he's not alive, that's bad. Like there's no good out here
Yeah,
for Trump.
so the best he can hope for, like the best is he's alive, keep him alive, but in El Salvador, that's really probably the best situation.
For
But the
Trump.
most likely is that he's probably. I hope I'm not wrong. I don't want this to be the case because it's disgusting
Right.
what has happened to this poor man. Absolutely disgusting. And like I know there's a lot going on, but like we have to be keep up the moral outrage about this because if he loses his due process, we've all just lost our due process. We've surrendered our
Absolutely.
power to him. We've normalized this if we do not stick with this story. And I
Well,
know
and
there's a lot
Kim
that we
points
have to
out,
care about.
yeah, Kim points out he's a great poster child because the whole reason he had asylum and the reason there was the court order previously to prevent him from being deported is that he got asylum because his family was wanted by or was threatened by El Salvadorian gangs. CCOT is obviously going to be full of El Salvadorian gang members, obviously. So as soon as they
Mhm.
figure out who he is, he's in mortal danger for sure. And then, as Cynthia
Mhm.
points out, he's one example. The group of 280 some odd that he was with when they deported the big mass group before that the court tried to block, but Trump said the plane's already in the air and all that kind of shit. Um, there is the gay makeup artist. There's the guy with the autism tattoo. There's a whole bunch of them. There's they didn't get due process, which is a very big problem, and B, there's a lot of question about whether they actually are gang members. Like the tattoos that they showed to say that this is our justification. I know 50 people up here in Northeast PA with those exact same tattoos that are definitely not part of El Trey, or not part of
What
that
isn't
gang. You
the
know what I
one
mean?
Air Jordan logo? Like
Well, it's like, yeah, it's like trains, an L Jordan logo, the autism tattoo, these stars. Like, dude, there's 50 million hillbillies up here with the exact same tattoos. Those are not gang tattoos. You're crazy. Some of them are religious tattoos, and I understand why the focus is on Abrego Garcia because it's so visual and visceral because of all the court things. But these other guys too were denied due process, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they were also wrongfully deported.
yeah, yeah, and to think that they weren't is just being naive, and
Yeah.
you know they've already started trying to deport citizens now, not because they were like they didn't they were on their name was on a list. ICE came to them and they're like, "Whoa, we're citizens." And
Hmm.
ICE didn't, but it almost became a thing of deporting an American citizen to the, which I
Dude,
know that's the
Allison,
ultimate plan.
they caught 20 Navajo Nation people near a checkpoint in Arizona, detained them for hours, refused to accept their Navajo Nation IDs, and had the nerve to say, well, I mean, are Native Americans U.S. citizens? Are you effing kidding me? And at the same time, and you'll
That's such a
appreciate,
like.
right, and you'll
Mm,
appreciate this irony. The head of the Navajo Nation told all the citizens of the Navajo Nation they're considered to have dual citizenship as U.S. And their indigenous nation. He told them to have their state IDs with them, that their tribal ID would not be enough. However, at the same time, Senate, the House just passed the SAVE Act, which would make your state ID not enough to allow you to vote. So why would ICE accept it as your proof of citizenship? There's an obvious double standard here, and a slippery damn slope.
and that's
So
yeah, that's really what. And I was going to do a video on this because what people don't seem to understand. I've seen too many videos on TikTok about this. Okay, like when it comes to the Save Act, and I wanted to talk about something kind of related too before we run out of time. When it comes to the Save Act, it's what it doesn't say. Now, a lot of times, like, all right, let's rewind back to normal times. A lot of times laws are written slightly vague because states have to adopt these laws. And there's different types of laws too, which that's a whole other time frame. But a lot of times a law like this, like the Save Act type law, is written vaguely because lots of states have to adopt it. Lots of states have different challenges. So there's and let's rewind back to normal times. There has to be some flexibility ish to accommodate different situations. You can't have anything too specific because then it makes really common situations illegal, and then you have just as many problems, if not more, if the language is too specific. Okay, let's fast forward back to present time. Now laws are being worded very, very vague because not for the normal reason, but to allow for a lot of wiggle room on how it's interpreted. Mm-hmm. So no, it does not say specifically married women cannot vote now, or married women must present their passport to prove citizenship. It does not say that. It's because it doesn't say that. It does not say a marriage certificate is your real ID will not act as a form of citizenship. Go to the Department of Homeland Security website. All the real ID is doing is putting a little star, usually in black or gold, and it says you're okay to travel within the United States and you're cleared to enter certain federal buildings. That's it. It has nothing to do with citizenship. It just means your ID is real, is authentic. Now, I don't know where the citizenship part came, and I think there might be some states that are considering that as a proof of citizenship. But I know in Georgia, we have the real ID rolling out, and that doesn't do anything for citizenship. Like, it does nothing. Like, I don't know why people think the real ID means citizenship. It doesn't. It just means your ID is legit. Because you can have a green card and also have a valid Georgia driver's license or a Pennsylvania driver's license.
You're still not eligible to vote.
You're still not eligible to vote. So, yeah, Cynthia is exactly right, which was what I wanted to get to. It's a poll tax on women. It's a barrier for women and indigenous groups and because to prove citizenship, they're going to require a passport. Now, a passport, and I don't know if we have any European friends listening at the moment, or well, like a U.S. passport is not easy to get, like it is for the EU or Australia or pretty much any other country in the world. The U.S. passport costs a lot of money. It's like $200, which, depending on your socioeconomic bracket, $200 could be a lot of money. For me, it's a lot of money. Like that for me and my daughter to get a passport right now, that's a burden on us. That would be so. So to get that passport, there's time. You have to have all your documents, marriage, birth certificate. So if you don't have a birth certificate, you gotta go pay for a certified copy. So, okay, so let's say you pay all the monies, you get your passports, and you mail all your original documents to them. So that means if they don't mail your original back to you, you gotta go get another copy, which could be anywhere in Georgia. It can be anywhere, depending on what it is you need. It can be $5 to $25, depending on the document you need or how many pages that document is. So it can be, so it disenfranchises women mostly, but it disenfranchises.
As Brandon points out, this was probably in part to target trans people who've changed their name legally.
Yeah, that's definitely probably a big part of it. Like I'm sure a lot of it.
What they didn't think about, and
Oh
we've talked
no,
about this,
go ahead.
what we've talked about this extensively, is a we know they want to disenfranchise women. Obviously, they want to disenfranchise uh, trans people, but it also is going to impact a lot of people who were not necessarily the net they were looking to catch. And all of it's in the name of them claiming that undocumented people are voting, which there's no statistical proof that that's true. Um, but it's also going to hit a lot of people who were adopted and can't get an original birth certificate, or their original birth certificate
That's
didn't
a
have a
good point.
name
Yeah.
on it. It was listed as, baby girl or whatever. It's going to impact people like me. I'm divorced. I didn't change my name at the time. I'm having to change my name now so that I'm eligible to vote. Um, yeah, JD Vance has changed his name how many times? Like, has he gotten a new birth certificate each time?
That's a good
And
point. I didn't think
right, and
about that. That's true.
right, and for older people in particular, if they were born at home through a midwife, their state may not have required a birth certificate the same way. Like, there's a whole bunch of cases that are impacted by this. And then you have the additional factor of, like, I'm in a very rural area. I believe I may be able to get a passport at some of the post offices in my area. Maybe. I'm going to have to verify. But
Mhm.
otherwise, the closest passport office I know of is done through a library at our district center that is more than an hour away. And I only know
That's a
that
good
because I'm
point.
in libraries. And so there's a lot of people who don't know that. None of my public libraries in my county are passport offices because it takes so much training and money to do it. I wish we could be, because it would be very, very helpful in cases like this. But for the average person looking to get a passport to prove that, they're going to have to spend all that money, get the documents, and travel a significant distance to do it in person, or they're going to have to send it through the mail, like you said. And all of those, once you go and get your passport, you still have to wait for it to arrive. And there's going to be all
That's more
kinds
money
of,
to expedite it, too. If
right.
like, I don't know if
Well,
it.
and
I've never paid for expedition, but
do you
um,
trust DeJoy's post office to deliver your certified original birth certificate back to you in a
yeah, I don't
timely
trust
manner?
anything
Like,
from
let's be
this
real.
ministry.
They do have it through
Um,
AAA. Okay, good to know, Cynthia.
oh, yeah, that's a good point.
But I think the average person doesn't know this. They don't know that where you go to get those things, because like up here in Northeast PA, these people aren't, they're barely leaving the county. They're sure as hell not leaving the country. They've never needed to get a passport. And so the infrastructure isn't here, and they wouldn't know where to find it anyway if it were here.
And you know what? Like, remember the uh, money that states were denying, were not implementing for broadband? This is a good
Yep,
reason to not have broadband for your communities, so they can't find this information. Like, it's really
exactly.
sinister. Like, and if you asked any, no politician would ever give you this reason. But I mean, connect the dots. Like,
But
talk
it's
about
that
like,
classic case that Trump always does of cite a problem that doesn't exist. So in this case, undocumented people voting. Stats don't prove that. They, in fact, prove the opposite, but fine, let's say that's true. So then you offer a solution, but it disenfranchises more people. And so you propose a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, and you create more problems. It's what he always does.
yep. Oh, I didn't know that you could go get a passport like, obviously I know you can go to the post office, but I thought they still mailed your, like, I thought no
I don't,
matter how you did it, like, you still ended up having to mail your stuff to the State Department
Gottfried,
for
because you have
them to.
experience with this, you may be able to answer this question, but I thought there was no situation, no matter how much you paid, that you could get a same day passport. Like, you can expedite it to come faster, but I don't think you
Yeah,
can leave the building with it in your hand that day because of
yeah,
all
I
the
don't, I don't,
verification.
yeah,
I would
I
love to be
like, no, I
wrong,
was
but I
looking
don't
at
think that's the case.
Godfrey's comment. Like,
Yeah,
I
because I
thought no
haven't done it,
matter.
I don't know, but I didn't
Oh,
think that was
oh,
the
you've
case.
never. I see. The last time I did it, it was like, it was a long time ago. And I remember mailing in all my originals. I had to do it. I've done it like 3 times in my life, and I never had an issue getting my originals back. But we're in different times now, so
Okay,
Um,
Gottfried said that he could not get it the same day. He brought the docs in and a photo, and they sent it to him, and it took about a month later to get it. So if you're coming up on midterms and you roll out these laws and you time it right, you've got a whole bunch of people who may not have realized they needed to go through all these steps to be eligible to vote in the midterm, for example. That's not an
and I
accident.
think that like a lot of times you have to have it expedited, like to get it. Like I mean, this now, like I think when I did it, when I was, um, like in the past, I don't think we paid for it to be expedited, but I got it relatively quickly. But I'm sure they're taking
Well, and this
their
is happening
sweet
at the same
time.
time that Doge is cutting funding and staffing in all of these departments that are the ones who would be doing the paperwork. So you're going to have extra time added because of that. And the cuts that DeJoy agreed to before he left for the post office is going to cut a ton of postal workers. So there's going to be a whole bunch of post offices that formerly did provide passport services that are no longer going to because it's just not feasible. So that's going to mean you have to go further to go. And then once it gets up into the federal level aspect, the people up there to process it aren't there. There's not as
Right?
many. So the
Yeah.
backlog's going to be insane.
We're heading up to, we're almost out of time, but I really wanted to talk about this because it brought me joy. I hope it brings you all just a little sliver of joy that we all need to feel. So let's talk about Canada's sucker punch to Donald Trump. And
How much are we
it is
loving
just
Canada rising up to be our friendly neighbor who's punching the Nazis, trying to
yeah.
punch the Nazis? Who saw that coming?
Okay. So this is I can put this link in the description later. But this was a really good breakdown on what really happened, because we've heard bond market tariffs, no tariffs, all that good stuff. And so, what exactly did Trump do, or what did Carney do, who's the Prime Minister of Canada? And the Substack gives a really just bullet points on what he did, what bonds are, who owns them, etc. So, what is let me get that down. So, what is just brought me such joy? Okay, so Carney is actually the interim prime minister until they have their elections. When are they? I think later this month or early next month. They're happening soon. So, Carney is the former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. He knows banking, he knows finance, he knows economics. I did not know this, but I also, up until fairly recently, was not following Canadian politics because, you know,
Ours is
it's a
enough.
lot. This is a lot. But since Trump had to go start running his mouth about shit he doesn't know about, obviously I've been paying more attention to Canada. Um, just because it's okay, what could this mean for us? But anyway, so Carney, and he's pulled this before, like with, not on this global scale, but so basically what he did while Trump's, oh, tariffs, economy, I know everything, dar, dar, he got South Korea, Japan, China, and England all on the phone and said, hey guys, okay, this guy's crazy. This is what we're going to do. Japan, start selling your bonds. Hey, can't the Canadians are going to buy them slowly. And remember we were talking about, or I might have talked, you might not have been on that episode, but I was like, Japan's selling their bonds, and that means something's up. Well, it did mean something is up. Canada started buying them. Okay, so why is that important? Well, by Canada buying bonds, we're not talking savings bonds. We're talking the bond market is essentially our debt. So people are buying, investing in our debt. And there's different levels of bonds, different types of bonds. Some are riskier than others, but American bonds, treasury bonds, are typically seen as, and let's go rewind to normal times, they're one of the safest things you can invest in because America pays its bills, or we used to. We didn't make threats of invading and not paying our bills and all that stuff. So the Canadians started buying our bonds, like a lot of them. And they've owned a lot of our bonds already. They started buying a lot more of them. And this is back in March too. So while this is like, people are like, why is Japan selling its bonds, China's selling its bonds, Canada is buying them up. So what does this mean? It means that now Canada holds more of our debt. You're like, okay, who the fuck cares? This is why we care. Because the bonds, all right, if you open a stash account or Robinhood or any of those types of investment accounts, for people, everyday people like us, they'll ask you your risk, and it'll be low to high. And if you select low, most of that money will be invested in bonds. It's stable because the U.S. pays its bills. Remember, we're rewinding to normal times. The U.S. pays its bills, political and economic stability. You'll get interest, just not a high interest, because it's a low risk investment. More risk, more gain. More risk also means you can get fucked. So American bonds are usually a safe bet. A lot of times investment people will say bonds are where risk goes to hide. So when the stock market starts falling, usually bonds rise because everybody moves to bonds. But the stock market started falling, bonds started falling. So what does that mean? It means that there's confidence in American debt is getting lower. When there's a sell-off of our bonds, inflation can rise because money is being flooded into the market. It causes lending for people like us. Good luck getting a low interest mortgage. But more importantly, the political and economic instability it shows. Because if people are selling their bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds, and by people I mean really, I'm talking the governments, it means there's no confidence in our country. Trump needs that confidence to be maintained because his presidency is a house of cards. He has an illusion to his followers that he knows everything. He's so smart. Dear leaders fear him. And he's made all these promises of what's going to happen to the economy. Now, the stock market plummeting, he can play that off. The bonds are a different story because they're so stable and they don't fluctuate. So come back to present time. Carney didn't just massively start selling off the bonds, a slow bleed. And the fact that I know this and everyday people notice, Trump's people know this, or like they know this. They knew this. They probably told them about it. But he probably said, hey, it's fine. Yeah, I'll go call Canada and bully them around. And they're going to be like, oh, sir, you're so smart. Like, no, that's not how it works. So rewind to, when was it? Thursday of last week, where he was like, wait, hold up, pause the tariffs. Trump noticed the bond market was starting to tank because Carney was releasing the valve of their shareholding of our treasury bonds. So I find that delicious because it really shows you how you don't have to be a fucking asshole to get a big economy to just stop. Like, he literally stopped Trump in his tracks and was like, you want me to stop the bleeding? Repeal that tariff. And he got him to say uncle. Like, it's a lot. MAGA's downplaying it. Trump's people are downplaying it. It's a big deal. And I wanted to show y'all something really quick before we go. So, but when Justin Trudeau resigned, he resigned because he was deeply unpopular. And I don't know why he was deeply unpopular. I'm not really sure. Like, up until recently, I hadn't really paid attention to Canadian politics. Oh, shoot. So, the Conservatives, this guy, I cannot even, Pierre, I cannot pronounce, I don't speak French, and I have to hear somebody say it before I can pronounce. So we're just going to call him by his first name. He's the conservative. This dude was slated to be the front runner in January. The Conservatives were set to take over Canadian Parliament. And this is also why the downsides of multi-party systems. You can see, like, I don't necessarily think a two-party system is the best system, but this is what a lot of systems look like. A lot of party systems looks like. That's a technical word. The most interesting graph I found was this. Okay, so this was January 20th, 2025, day of the election. The Conservatives, the dark line up top, they were at 44%. Liberals were at 21%. And then the Trump presidency just starts. And now look at the Liberals. And they are slated to not only keep their seats in Parliament, but they're also let me get back. They're also slated to keep the prime minister. They're going to keep the seats, so therefore, in a parliamentary system, it would be like Congress electing our president. That's how, like, the parliamentary system works. Thank God that's not. Thank God that's not the case.
What's hilarious about this is you can see in real time how the growing insanity here made our neighbors to the north say, "Oh hell no, we're not doing that," and it changed the entire trajectory of their political direction that they were going. Because as it got crazier here, that number rose and Pierre has been echoing some Trump shit, and that's what's hurting him because the Canadians are like, "Oh hell nah."
Oh,
No,
hell
we're not
no.
watching the meth house below us go insane and just adopt their same policies. Oh hell no. So
and you know what's
Canada
Oh,
can
I'm sorry.
thank Trump for changing their political outcome. So that's the one good thing Trump has managed to do.
Also a really good point is that I wanted to make, it not so much a point but an irony, is I've been hearing, and I'm people like Malcolm Nance and those former intelligence officials that are saying Trump really wants to invade and destabilize. He's trying to destabilize Canada's economy. Oops. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Canadians have
Like,
never been more united, and even if what they're united against is what's happening here, hey, they have never been
I
more united.
I made this comment to somebody's Substack. I think it's called Canada Resists or something to that effect. But I made a comment on there because they had this post that was, about like how it's really sad that, we are Americans and Canadians are like this. I hold no animosity towards Canadian. Like, I said, guys got to do what you got to do. It's really sad that, like, it's not sad, like, the economics of it. Like, I don't want to see people suffer in any capacity. I have way too much empathy for my soul to take that. But, like, we need to get to the find out portion so we can end this nightmare. Because, like, what people don't like. All right, let's say Canadians are freeloaders. Okay, let's just say that hypothetically that was true. Let's say hypothetically Mexico was a bunch of, they're the worst people, but let's just say all that's true. And I didn't come up with this point, but it was such a good one. We literally hit geopolitical gold having Mexico and Canada as our neighbors. what actual issues have we had to worry about with Canada and Mexico in the last 100 years, 150 years? I think the 39th parallel was the last time we actually had an argument with Canada type shit. I don't remember when that was, in the 1800s sometime, but like, think about, like, imagine if our neighbor was China or Russia or, you know, like, think about the bullshit other continents have to
We're
deal with.
so
And look
spoiled
at the
because we've had our border integrity. As much as they claim the southern border is open and blah blah blah, we've had border integrity unlike pretty much any other country in the world for a long time, and stability. Because even when there's been instability, particularly in Mexico, it hasn't bled over into the US to the level that it would if we were, in Europe or somewhere else. We definitely
yeah,
don't have
like,
that level of impact.
and think about, like, when immigration and refugees, like, Europeans accept when European countries accept refugees from, war torn places. Think about how much space we have and how much little space they have. Like, when you really look at our geography, like, there's plenty of room. And, like, I think that if a lot of MAGA had some education, like genuine education, like, some will defend Trump till they die. Like, really look at why you should be grateful that they're our neighbors, and, like, what's really the issue. Like, let's get to the honesty of what you really hate about immigration. Like, it's not, it's you're just a bigot. Most of the time it's you're just a bigot because these people aren't taking your jobs. You already said you don't want to work in farms, you don't want to work in the sweatshops. So what jobs are they taking from you? You said you didn't want to work in corporate. Like, what what's your problem? What is the real issue? You're like, most of the time you're just a bigot because
Allison,
you're
you'll
not going to
appreciate
do.
this. Trump's flipping on his undocumented thing as well, and he's now saying that the farm workers and the like hotel workers, that maybe we should just let their bosses vet them and that way they can work here legally.
Oh my god.
Hmm. It's like we've been saying that
Imagine
this
that.
entire time. I
No,
think the
okay, so,
farmers are coming after him like, the crops are rotting in the field, dude. They're not
and
showing up to
nobody
work because they
appreciates
know
the
you're going to
child
deport
labor
them.
shit that Florida's trying to pull.
Right.
I really thought Floridians would accept that. Like, I really did. I'm sorry if any of you are Floridian, but y'all accept a lot of scary shit. And apparently that's not acceptable. And
I
so,
mean,
which
hey,
it
we
shouldn't
found we
be.
found the
It
line in the
shouldn't
sand for
be.
Florida man. That's a good thing. So I'm glad to hear that. Do
Oh
you know
my
why we
goodness.
hear so many wild stories out of Florida? And I feel bad for
The
them so
sunshine
much.
laws.
Exactly. It's not because more crazy crime happens in Florida, it's that their laws allow the
It's
press to
available.
see them. Exactly.
But you
So I
gotta
feel
admit,
bad
some
for
of them
Florida
are
man.
really out there. Like,
I mean,
I mean,
listen, when it involves meth and an alligator, I can't help you there. That is what it is.
yeah, fair
Not that
point. Georgia's
Pennsylvania is
trying to
much better.
close
We've
its
got plenty of
sunshine
crazy stories
laws.
too. Yeah.
We don't have a sunshine law. We have a freedom of information law, but in the next session, they're trying to make it harder to find out information about police activity, certain things, for
Oh, cute.
security.
That's a
Um,
problem. So New York is right above us, and their privacy laws are so strict that, like, when I was working in housing, if I requested a criminal background check on someone who had lived in New York, they will not give it to you at all.
oh wow,
And they
really?
won't
I didn't know
publish.
that.
Yeah, they have very strict laws about their court cases and privacy and all that. So I'm sure there's wild ass Florida level shit happening in New York, but we're not hearing about it because of their privacy laws. So poor Florida man gets a little bit. I have a little sympathy for him, a little bit. Um, it's a disproportionate thing. Like, wild shit happens
Yeah.
everywhere. It's not just Florida.
No. Oh, that I totally agree. It's the
Okay.
kind of shit. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you won't hear about a New Yorker, like, you'll hear about a New Yorker on meth. You'll hear about an alligator, but most of the time, the story isn't those two things at the same time.
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know what I'm
Cynthia
saying?
knows
Like,
Pennsylvania's got plenty of crazy. We have our own brand of crazy. Don't worry. It's here. You just might not hear
I
about
mean,
it the
we
way we hear
produce
about Florida.
MTG, so
That's true.
I haven't, I can't really, I feel like I don't have really a state identity because, like, I was born and raised in New York, but I haven't lived there. But I feel that New York is home. Like, when I say I'm going home, I mean New York. But I also feel like home is Georgia, but I don't feel like it's really home. So I don't really
Hmm.
like, I feel like I don't, just because I live here currently, it's not necessarily like I feel like it's home, but I feel like it's not at the same time. Like, and I feel like other people don't view me as a Georgian.
I have the same problem. I've lived in 5 states, and even though I'm coming close to being in Pennsylvania longer than I was in my home state. I'm still will never be considered a native. I'll never be considered one of them, But I still have
Hmm.
compassion, empathy, or I feel connected to the different states I've lived in. So when they do something wild, I'm like, come on. Like I take it personally, even though I haven't lived there in a decade.
Yeah, even like, yeah, I've lived in quite a few states that I definitely have a connection to, like every state that I've lived in. Um, but speaking of which, if these tariffs, like coffee is about to get really expensive, Hawaii makes coffee. They produce Kona coffee, which is way better, and it will not be tariff implemented. So there's an alternative.
Um, Godfrey makes a point related to what we were just talking about. A lot of the states are trying to make it prohibitively expensive to get body cam video. And so Derek is, I'm going to totally rat on him. He loves watching these body cam videos on TV. I hate them. They make me nervous. But if you're not doing, like, the body cams are there to protect the police from being accused of illegal action, right? And also to protect the person who is potentially being arrested from being accused of something they didn't do. So they're for both sides protection. There's only one reason to limit body cam video, and it's because you did shady shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it necessarily I love body cam video when it's like Karen's in
Yeah.
the police. Those are but but yeah, they do kind of give me anxiety in some respects. But they make me nauseous too. It's too much like shaky movement. But
Hmm. Well, my
I
problem
can't.
is, my problem is, I'm sitting there waiting for the moment that shit goes sideways, and I know it's coming because they wouldn't be showing me this video if it wasn't going to,
I
and
get
it's
it. Yeah,
always the
I can see
anxiety
that.
of, and it's always the anxiety of which one of these is going to be the one that takes this sideways, and how far is it going to go, and like my
That's
anxiety
yeah.
can't handle that. Like the
I
Karens
can.
are going to Karen, and that's a certain level of acceptable anxiety. But when you have like this traffic stop, and then the next thing you know, it's body cam video of a police chase, and you see these poor citizens trying to just get out of the way, and then there's shots fired and everything else, my anxiety is just like through the roof watching that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Derek was watching one, I think it was earlier today, and it's police video, and all these guys got, I don't know if they got fired, but they were put temporarily on administrative leave. They found a deceased body of, I believe, someone who was homeless, and they decided to use this opportunity to play a prank on one of their newest officers. Holy crap. So unacceptable on so many levels. And I could not continue watching it because I was just ready to get out my pitchfork. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I don't think it should be like necessarily easy to get it, but I don't think it should be like hard either. And that's probably a non-answer. I mean, I guess I got to think on that one. Um
Cynthia, I think you're right.
but
There is a state that's trying to stop mandated use of body cams, and that is very, very alarming because
let me guess. Ohio or Missouri?
I'm thinking Idaho or Texas. Those are my guesses. But your guesses are really good too.
Yeah, I mean those
Ooh.
are legit. Like if it has to be with books, definitely Idaho or Texas. But
Hmm.
stopping body camp,
Oh, trust
like
me. Growing up in rural Texas, the good old boys definitely did some shit. that they did not want documented.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Like, yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
we better
no,
wrap it up.
no.
Like, subscribe, do the internet stuff, and plug your socials, ma'am.
Oh, yeah. Head to the in the description. We have our links to everything for our Substack. Buy us a coffee because it's about to get expensive. So, all the and any links to Tony's Substack and his YouTube, which he's back on YouTube. If you were wondering where he got suspended because people suck and are too sensitive. But
It's kind of a
he's back on
superpower getting
YouTube.
suspended on YouTube.
His superpower is staying on YouTube. Like he has like 9 lives on the platform. Like they really
Mm.
didn't want him on the platform. And
He's persistent. He's might be the most stubborn guy on the planet.
yeah, he definitely has a fierceness sometimes. It's just like, God, stop it. But anyway, so all of our links, Linktree, Substack, Tony's are in the description. And we will catch you next week. Thanks all for coming.
Bye, guys.